The red dust swirled around Olivia's boots as she knelt beside the crystalline formation. Her scanner hummed softly, recording data about the mineral composition embedded in the rock face. 18 months on Meridian 7 had taught her to read these formations like others read books. Each layer told a story of volcanic pressure, tectonic shifts, and time measured in millions of years. She wiped sweat from her forehead and checked her water supply. The twin suns were descending toward the jagged mountain range, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Another 3 hours of daylight remained, enough time to finish mapping this section of the canyon before heading back to the colony. Meridian 7 was not a glamorous posting. The planet sat 3 months away from the nearest shipping lane, its harsh environment and remote location making it unattractive for major corporate interests. But for the 47 people who called it home, the colony represented something valuable: purpose, community, a chance to contribute to humanity's understanding of the universe without the pressures and politics of more established worlds. Director Hayes ran the settlement with a practical approach that prioritized safety and efficiency. Dr. Patel handled medical needs with limited supplies and endless patience. Engineer Walsh kept the power running and the air processors functional. Teachers educated the handful of children in a prefabricated classroom, decorated with drawings of Earth animals none of them had ever seen. Olivia had found her place among them. Her geological surveys identified viable mining sites and helped predict seismic activity. The work mattered. The people mattered. For the first time since leaving Earth, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Her scanner beeped, pulling her attention back to the rock face. An unusual metallic signature appeared on the display, different from the standard mineral deposits she had been cataloging. She frowned and adjusted the settings, thinking the equipment might be malfunctioning. The reading persisted, multiple metallic signatures moving through the upper atmosphere. Olivia stood and pulled out her long-range scope, scanning the sky. For a moment, she saw nothing but clouds and the fading light of the twin suns. Then she spotted them. 6 angular shapes descending through the atmosphere, their hull designs completely unfamiliar. Her training kicked in immediately. She activated her communicator. Static, pure, unbroken static across all frequencies. The ships were jamming communications. Her hands moved automatically, pulling up the emergency protocols on her tablet. Unidentified vessels approaching colonial space should trigger automatic defense responses. But Meridian 7 had no military presence, no orbital weapons, no fighter craft. The colony's only defense system consisted of perimeter sensors designed to detect wildlife and geological hazards. They were defenseless. Olivia zoomed in with her scope, studying the approaching vessels. Their design suggested advanced technology, sleek lines and energy signatures far beyond standard civilian craft. These were not exploration ships or trading vessels. She was 15 kilometers from the colony, separated by rough terrain that would take hours to traverse on foot. Her field vehicle sat another 2 kilometers away, parked at the canyon entrance where the ground became too unstable for wheels. The ships changed formation, spreading out as they approached the settlement. Olivia watched through the scope, her heart pounding, as the vessels took up positions around the colony perimeter. Then the first energy weapons fired. Bright lances of concentrated power sliced through the prefabricated structures. Explosions erupted across the settlement. Olivia could see tiny figures running, trying to reach shelter, trying to escape. From this distance, she could not identify individuals, could not tell if Hayes or Patel or Walsh or any of the others had survived those first terrible seconds. The attack continued with brutal efficiency. The raiders targeted the power station first, cutting electricity to the entire colony. Then the communications array exploded in a shower of sparks and melted metal. The administrative building, where Hayes would have been trying to activate the emergency beacon, collapsed under sustained fire. Olivia forced herself to keep watching, to record everything with the scope's built-in camera. Her hands shook. Tears blurred her vision, but she kept the scope steady, documenting the massacre. The assault lasted 12 minutes, 12 minutes of systematic destruction. Then the weapons' fire stopped. The 6 ships landed in a rough circle around the ruined settlement. Figures emerged from the vessels. Even at this distance, Olivia could tell they were not human. Their movements were too fluid, their proportions slightly wrong. They began moving through the wreckage with purpose, not checking for survivors but salvaging equipment and supplies. The raiders had not come to make contact. They had not come to negotiate. They had come to take what they wanted and eliminate anyone who might report their crime. Olivia lowered the scope and stared at the smoke rising from the colony. Her colony, her home, her friends. She should run, get to her vehicle, drive to one of the emergency shelters scattered across the survey routes and wait for the next supply ship. That would be the smart choice, the safe choice. But safety had died 12 minutes ago along with everyone she cared about. Olivia checked her field pack. Standard survey gear, emergency rations, water purification tablets, and a first aid kit. Not exactly a military loadout, but she also had something the raiders did not. She knew every canyon, every cave, every hidden passage on this planet. She had spent 18 months studying Meridian 7's geology, learning its secrets, mapping its dangers. The raiders had made a critical mistake. They had left a witness alive, a witness who understood this world better than anyone. Olivia turned away from the burning colony and started walking toward her vehicle. The rage building inside her felt cold and focused. These raiders would learn something important about humans. They would learn what happens when you back a survivor into a corner on hostile ground. They would learn that isolation cuts both ways. 3 hours of running and climbing brought Olivia to the ridge overlooking the colony. She approached the final stretch on her stomach, using the rocks for cover, moving only when the wind masked any sound she might make. The settlement looked worse up close. The prefabricated structures had been torn apart with precision. Walls melted by energy weapons, roofs collapsed, personal belongings scattered across the red dust like forgotten memories. The 6 raider ships sat in a circle around the ruins, their ramps extended. Olivia counted the aliens moving between the vessels and the destroyed buildings. Reptilian features, scaled skin that shifted color slightly in the fading light. They moved with confidence, laughing and calling to each other in a language that sounded like gravel sliding down metal. They were celebrating. Olivia forced herself to breathe slowly, to observe rather than react. The raiders worked in teams, systematically stripping anything valuable from the colony. Power cells, medical supplies, food stores, processed minerals from the storage facility. They loaded everything into cargo containers that disappeared into their ships. She counted 30 raiders total, though more might be inside the vessels. They carried energy rifles as standard equipment, the weapons hanging casually from shoulder straps. Their armor looked light but effective, designed for mobility rather than heavy combat. As darkness fell, the raiders activated portable lights around their camp. They set up a perimeter of automated sensors, then most of them retreated into their ships. Only 6 remained outside, standing guard in rotating shifts. Olivia waited until full dark before moving closer. The twin moons provided minimal light, and she used every shadow, every fold in the terrain. Years of fieldwork had taught her how to move quietly across rocky ground. She reached the colony's outer edge and slipped between the ruins of the water treatment facility. The smell hit her immediately. Blood and burned plastic and something else, something worse. Bodies lay where they had fallen. Director Hayes slumped over his desk, one hand still reaching toward the emergency beacon control panel. The beacon itself had been destroyed, melted into useless slag. Dr. Patel had made it to the medical bay, surrounded by supplies she had been gathering, trying to help until the end. Olivia found Walsh in the maintenance building, tools still clutched in his hands. He had been trying to repair something, to fix the unfixable. The children were in the school. She could not make herself enter that building. Not yet, maybe not ever. She worked through the night, moving carefully, salvaging what she could while avoiding the raider patrols. Her field pack already contained basic survival gear. Now she added critical supplies from the ruins. Walsh's hunting rifle, cleaned and maintained despite rarely being used. 3 magazines of ammunition. A military-grade first aid kit from Patel's medical supplies. A damaged tablet containing partial colony records. Most importantly, the backup sensor array from the communications center. The sensor array had been recording when the attack began. Olivia downloaded the data and studied it in the darkness of a collapsed storage room. Energy signatures, ship configurations, communication frequencies. The aliens had been thorough, but they had not bothered to destroy backup systems. Why would they? Everyone was dead. Except they had miscounted. The data revealed patterns in the raider patrols, shift changes, equipment capabilities. The aliens used biological scanners, probably how they had verified no survivors remained in the settlement. But the scanners had limited range, and Olivia had been 15 kilometers away during the initial sweep. She cross-referenced the raider movements with her geological surveys of the region. The aliens had chosen to land on flat, stable ground near the colony, tactically sound for their purposes. But it also meant they were surrounded by the very terrain Olivia knew better than anyone. Canyon systems riddled with unstable formations. Cave networks that could hide a person indefinitely. Geological features that could be weaponized by someone with the right knowledge and enough motivation. Before leaving, Olivia went to the small cemetery where the colony had buried 2 people who died of natural causes during her time on Meridian 7. The ground was soft there, easier to dig than the surrounding rock. She spent hours creating graves, moving bodies with gentle care despite the horror of the work. She could not bury everyone. There were too many and dawn would come too soon. But she buried Hayes and Patel and Walsh. She marked each grave with stones and spoke words she hoped would matter. The sky was beginning to lighten when she finished. Olivia knelt beside the graves and made a decision that would define everything that followed. The emergency beacon was destroyed. The communications array was slag. The next supply ship would not arrive for 3 months. By then, these raiders would have hit other colonies, killed other people, and vanished into the vast emptiness of space. Unless someone stopped them here. 30 armed raiders with superior technology versus 1 geologist with a hunting rifle and knowledge of local terrain. The odds were absurd. Any rational person would hide, survive, and wait for rescue. But Olivia had spent the night burying her friends. She had seen what these raiders did to defenseless people. She had watched them laugh and celebrate their massacre. Rationality could go to hell. She checked the rifle, loaded a magazine, and memorized the raider patrol patterns from the sensor data. The aliens had established a temporary camp 12 kilometers south, processing their stolen goods before moving on. They thought they were safe. They thought the job was done. They thought humans were soft targets, scattered across isolated colonies with no way to fight back. Olivia stood and looked toward the raider camp. The aliens were about to receive an education in human stubbornness. They would learn that isolation worked both ways. They would learn that some prey, when cornered, became hunters. She slung the rifle across her back and disappeared into the canyons. Behind her, the graves stood silent in the morning light. Ahead, 30 raiders continued their work, completely unaware that their days were now numbered. The geologist had become something new, something dangerous. The last survivor of Meridian 7 was going hunting. Olivia spent 2 days observing the raider camp from elevated positions in the surrounding ridges. She watched their routines develop, noted their casual attitude toward security, and studied how they interacted with each other. The raiders operated with military precision when loading cargo, but their downtime revealed a dangerous overconfidence. They had raided frontier colonies before, probably dozens of times. This was routine work to them, barely worth their full attention. She identified their leader by behavior rather than insignia, a scarred reptilian who commanded immediate respect from the others. The raiders called him something that sounded like Kreeth in the recordings from her stolen communicator. He was methodical, experienced, and clearly accustomed to success. The patrols followed predictable patterns, two-person teams moving through predetermined routes every 4 hours. The raiders carried advanced energy weapons and wore light armor, but they moved through the canyons like tourists admiring scenery. They expected no resistance. Olivia chose her first target carefully, a patrol route that passed through a narrow canyon she had studied extensively during her first months on Meridian 7. The walls were tall, composed of layered sedimentary rock weakened by centuries of temperature fluctuations and minimal water erosion. The canyon was a geological disaster, waiting for the right trigger. She spent half a day preparing, placing small mining charges at key structural points along the canyon walls. The charges came from the colony's supply depot, intended for legitimate surveying work. Now they would serve a different purpose. When the patrol entered the canyon, Olivia was positioned on the ridge above. She watched through her scope as the two raiders walked casually through the narrow passage, their weapons held loosely, their attention focused on their conversation rather than their surroundings. She waited until they reached the optimal position, then triggered the charges in sequence. The explosion was relatively small but precisely placed. Cracks spread through the already weakened rock face like lightning across the sky. For a moment, nothing happened. Then physics took over. Thousands of tons of stone broke free and thundered downward. The raiders had perhaps 2 seconds to understand what was happening, not nearly enough time to escape. The avalanche buried them completely. When the dust settled, the canyon floor had risen by 3 meters. Nothing remained visible of the patrol except a small piece of scaled armor protruding from the rubble. Olivia remained motionless on the ridge for another hour, watching for any response. Eventually, other raiders came to investigate when the patrol failed to report. They found only rock and dust. The lead investigator examined the scene, then spoke into his communicator in their harsh language. Through her stolen earpiece, Olivia heard the report. Geological instability, unfortunate accident, the planet was dangerous. These things happened. They had bought the deception. 2 down, 28 to go. 3 days later, she struck again, this time in the crystalline caves that honeycombed the eastern ridge system. The caves were beautiful during daylight hours when natural light refracted through the formations, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. At night, they became absolutely dark. Olivia had explored these caves extensively, mapping every passage, every drop, every narrow squeeze between chambers. She knew them blindfolded. The raiders did not. She followed a patrol into the depths, moving through passages too narrow for their armored forms to navigate quickly. The aliens used headlamps, bright beams that destroyed their night vision and announced their position. Olivia needed no light. She moved by memory and touch, silent as thought. The attack came in a side chamber where the cave narrowed. Olivia emerged from a passage the raiders had dismissed as too small for humans, her geological hammer already swinging. The first raider went down without a sound, his headlamp shattering against the cave wall. The second raider spun toward the noise, energy rifle rising. But Olivia was already moving, using the darkness and her knowledge of the terrain. She led him deeper into the caves, through passages that twisted and doubled back. He fired blindly, energy bolts scorching the crystal walls but never finding their target. Eventually, his headlamp battery died. The rifle's power cell depleted. The raider found himself alone in absolute darkness, in a maze he could not navigate, with a predator who knew every inch of stone around him. Olivia listened to his panicked breathing echo through the caves. She waited until exhaustion and fear had stripped away his training. Then she finished it quickly. She took his weapons, his communicator, and most importantly, his personal data storage device. Then she left him in the darkness and made her way back to the surface. The raider camp was in chaos when the second patrol failed to return. Kreeth ordered increased security. Patrols now moved in groups of 4, maintaining constant communication with the base camp. Olivia listened to their chatter through the stolen communicator. Some raiders thought local wildlife was responsible. Others suggested automated defense systems left behind by the colony. A few, including Kreeth, were beginning to suspect the truth. Someone had survived, someone was hunting them. But even Kreeth made a critical assumption. He assumed any survivor would be hiding, waiting for rescue, trying to stay alive. He could not conceive that someone would actively hunt 30 armed raiders. Humans were supposed to be soft, emotional, uncomfortable with violence. Olivia watched the camp through her scope, her expression cold. 4 down, 26 remaining. The raiders were beginning to understand they were in danger, but they still did not understand the nature of their enemy. They thought they were fighting wildlife or machines. They did not yet realize they were fighting human stubbornness, combined with scientific knowledge and 18 months of geological expertise. She moved to her next position, already planning the third strike. The weather forecast showed a major storm approaching. High winds, limited visibility, electrical interference with sensors. Perfect conditions for a hunter who knew exactly how to use environmental factors as weapons. The raiders had come to Meridian 7 expecting an easy target. Instead, they had found a planet that fought back, guided by someone who understood its every secret. Olivia shouldered her rifle and disappeared into the canyons. Behind her, the raider camp continued its nervous preparations. Ahead, the storm gathered strength. The isolated colony had fallen, but the vengeance for its people had only just begun. The storm hit Meridian 7 with a force that only planets with thin atmospheres and extreme temperature gradients could produce. Wind speeds exceeded 200 kilometers per hour, carrying red dust and small rocks that could strip paint from metal. The atmospheric pressure fluctuated wildly, making breathing difficult for those not acclimated. Olivia had weathered dozens of these storms during her time on the planet. She knew how to read the warning signs, how to find shelter, how to use the chaos to her advantage. The raiders did not. She watched from a protected cave entrance as the raider camp struggled with the sudden weather change. Their ships could withstand the wind, but their external equipment was not designed for Meridian 7's extreme conditions. Sensors failed, power relays shorted out, and communication arrays shook loose from their moorings. The raiders retreated to their vessels and sealed the hatches, waiting for the storm to pass. Olivia moved into the wind. She had wrapped her face in cloth and wore protective goggles from her survey gear. The storm battered her, but she knew how to move with it rather than against it, using the rock formations to break the worst of the wind. She reached the raider camp perimeter and went to work. The external sensors came down first, their mounting brackets already stressed by the wind. Olivia helped them fail, using simple tools to break connection points. Without sensors, the raiders were effectively blind to anything happening outside their ships. Next, she sabotaged the power distribution nodes. Not completely, just enough to create intermittent failures that would frustrate and confuse. A wire loosened here, a connection corroded there with chemicals from her geology kit. Finally, she reached the supply depot. The raiders had been careless, leaving crates of food and water outside under basic weather covers. The covers were already failing in the storm. Olivia worked quickly. She contaminated the food stores with a local mineral compound she had studied extensively. The mineral was not lethal to carbon-based life, but it caused severe digestive distress when consumed in sufficient quantities. Cramping, nausea, dehydration, debilitating but not deadly. She wanted them weak and distracted, not dead, not yet. Before leaving, she stole more equipment. Explosives, energy cell packs, and most valuably, a portable hacking module that Walsh had been teaching her to use before everything ended. The device could interface with most standard computer systems, exploiting common security vulnerabilities. The storm raged for 18 hours. When it finally cleared, Olivia was safely hidden in a distant cave system, reviewing the stolen data and planning her next moves. The raiders emerged from their ships to find a disaster: sensors destroyed, power systems malfunctioning, and supplies exposed to contamination. They spent the next day trying to restore order. Then the sickness began. Half the raider force fell ill within 24 hours. The contaminated food had done its work. Olivia listened to the chaos on her stolen communicator, hearing Kreeth bark orders while his troops dealt with the effects of the mineral poisoning. Morale collapsed faster than the physical health. The raiders were scared now. 4 of their number had disappeared in mysterious circumstances. A massive storm had destroyed their equipment. Now half of them were too sick to fight. Some wanted to leave immediately. Others wanted to hunt down whoever was responsible. Kreeth struggled to maintain discipline, but fear spread faster than his authority could contain it. He made a decision. They would conduct one final sweep of the area, eliminate any threats, then depart with what they had already stolen. The mission had become too costly to continue. Kreeth selected 12 of his healthiest, most experienced raiders for a hunting party. They would scour the nearby canyons and caves, kill anything that moved, then return to pack up and leave this cursed planet behind. Olivia had been waiting for exactly this response. She knew the raiders would eventually commit significant forces to finding her. She had prepared accordingly. Deep in the canyon network was a geological feature she had been studying since her second month on Meridian 7. A massive underground chamber, accessed through a single narrow entrance, with walls saturated in pockets of flammable gas deposits. The gas was normally stable, trapped in porous rock formations. But with the right ignition source and proper ventilation manipulation, the chamber could become something else entirely. A bomb waiting for a trigger. Olivia spent 3 days preparing the site. She widened the entrance slightly to make it more appealing as a shelter or hiding spot. She left subtle signs of human presence: disturbed soil, a discarded food wrapper, boot prints leading toward the chamber. A trail for hunters to follow. When the raider hunting party deployed, Olivia watched from a distance. 12 heavily armed aliens moving in coordinated tactical formation. They were professionals, experienced in combat. Under normal circumstances, they would be absolutely lethal. But these were not normal circumstances. This was Meridian 7, and they were hunting someone who had turned the entire planet into a weapon. The hunting party found her trail within hours. They followed it carefully, checking for traps, moving with proper military caution. The trail led them through winding canyons, across unstable scree fields, and finally to the chamber entrance. The lead raider spotted the opening and signaled for the team to investigate. They entered in pairs, weapons ready, moving deeper into the chamber. The space was large enough for all 12 to spread out, searching methodically for their target. Olivia watched from a carefully positioned observation point. She had rigged the entrance with mining charges, not enough to cause immediate alarm but sufficient to seal the opening when triggered. She waited until all 12 raiders were deep inside the chamber. Then she activated the charges. The explosion collapsed the entrance, trapping the hunting party inside. The raiders immediately tried to blast their way out, but their energy weapons only made things worse. Each energy discharge ignited pockets of trapped gas. Small explosions began cascading through the chamber, growing in intensity as more gas pockets erupted. The chamber became a furnace. Olivia felt the ground shake beneath her feet. A massive explosion erupted from the chamber, venting through cracks in the canyon walls. Flames shot skyward, visible for kilometers. When the shaking stopped, she approached carefully. The entrance was completely collapsed. No sounds came from within. The chamber had become a tomb for 12 of Kreeth's best raiders. She activated her stolen communicator and listened to the chaos. Kreeth was screaming orders, demanding reports, trying to understand what had just happened. His hunting party was gone. More than half his original force was now dead or missing. 16 down. 14 remained, and at least half of those were still sick from the contaminated food. Olivia looked toward the raider camp. The aliens would be desperate now, frightened and dangerous. But they were also weakened, demoralized, and facing an enemy they still could not identify. The storm had been nature's weapon. The sickness had been chemistry. The explosion had been physics. Everything Olivia had learned as a geologist, she was now using to destroy the people who had destroyed her home. And she was not finished yet. Kreeth gave the order at dawn. They were leaving. Immediately. Whatever they were facing on this planet, it had killed more than half his force and destroyed any profit the mission might have generated. Survival now outweighed greed. Olivia watched from a distant ridge as the raider camp erupted into frantic activity. The aliens abandoned their sorting operations, leaving crates of stolen goods scattered around the landing site. They focused entirely on preparing the ships for immediate departure. She could let them go. She had hurt them badly. They would remember Meridian 7 as the colony that fought back, the place where raiders went to die. That might be enough. But it would not stop them from hitting the next colony, or the one after that. Olivia thought about the children in the school, about Dr. Patel trying to help until the very end, about Hayes reaching for an emergency beacon that never transmitted. These raiders had killed defenseless people without hesitation, without mercy. They could not be allowed to do it again. She spent the last 3 nights studying the raider ships using the stolen hacking module. Walsh had taught her the basics of electronic warfare during long evenings in the colony's recreation area. He had been passionate about security systems, always pointing out vulnerabilities in the colony's networks. Those lessons were about to pay a final dividend. The ships used sophisticated systems, but they shared common protocols with other known alien technology. The hacking module identified multiple entry points in their startup sequences and navigation computers. Olivia had also spent those 3 nights planting explosives around the landing site. Every mining charge from the colony stores, every improvised device she could construct from salvaged materials. She positioned them at structural weak points in the surrounding rock formations, creating a network of controlled destruction waiting for her command. As the raiders prepared for launch, Olivia activated the hacking module. She sent cascading system failures through 3 of the 6 ships, corrupting their navigation computers and locking down their power systems. The ships went dark, their engines failing during the critical startup sequence. Kreeth understood immediately. He screamed orders, directing technicians to assess the damage while his security forces established a defensive perimeter. But his force was down to 14 raiders, half of them still weakened from the poisoning. Olivia began detonating the charges, not randomly, but in carefully planned sequence. The explosions drove the raiders away from their defensive positions, herding them like animals toward the canyon she had selected for the final confrontation. Kreeth recognized the trap. He was experienced enough to see the manipulation, but his choices were limited. stay at the landing site and be picked apart by explosives and long-range fire, or enter the canyon where they could at least take cover and fight. He chose the canyon. It was the choice Olivia had predicted he would make. The 14 remaining raiders moved in tight formation, weapons ready, scanning for threats. They were professionals despite their fear, maintaining discipline even as everything collapsed around them. Olivia had prepared the canyon for 3 days. She had stockpiled weapons at multiple positions, creating firing points that allowed her to attack from different angles. She used the canyon's natural acoustics to make it seem like multiple attackers were present. The first shot came from the eastern ridge, a clean hit that dropped one raider instantly. The aliens returned fire, energy bolts scorching the rocks, but Olivia was already moving to her second position on the western wall. Another shot, another raider down. The aliens spread out, seeking cover among the boulders and rock formations. They were trying to locate her, to pin down her position. But she had 13 positions prepared, and she never stayed in one place long enough to become a target. The canyon became a killing ground. Olivia moved through passages she had memorized, firing from unexpected angles, using improvised explosives to create confusion. The raiders fired back desperately, but they were shooting at shadows. 12 raiders, 10, 8. The survivors began to panic. Some broke formation, trying to retreat back toward the ships. Olivia had prepared for that too. More explosives sealed the canyon entrance behind them. They were trapped in the same kind of situation they had inflicted on the colonists. No escape, no mercy, just the inevitable conclusion. 6 raiders, 4, 2. The final pair found cover behind a large boulder, using their superior firepower to keep Olivia pinned down. They were the best of what remained, experienced enough to force a stalemate. Olivia could wait them out, but time was not on her side. The 3 functioning ships might have automated systems that could eventually override her hacking. She needed to end this. She used the last of her mining charges to trigger a rockslide behind the boulder. The raiders were forced to move, exposing themselves for just a moment. It was enough, 2 quick shots, 2 bodies hitting the red dust. Silence settled over the canyon. Olivia emerged from her position, rifle ready, checking each fallen raider to confirm what she already knew. They were all dead. All except Kreith. She found him alive, wounded but conscious, propped against a rock wall. His energy rifle lay several meters away, knocked free by the explosion that had injured him. He stared at her with eyes that showed both pain and understanding. Kreith spoke in the human trade language, his words harsh but clear. He wanted to know why. Why a single human had destroyed his entire force. Why she had not hidden or run. Olivia raised her rifle and spoke simply, because they had made a mistake. They had assumed humans were weak. They had assumed isolation meant vulnerability. They had assumed no one would fight back. They had been wrong about all of it. Kreith laughed, a bitter sound. He said something about humans being more dangerous than the galaxy realized, about how their species would spread this story, how colonies like Meridian 7 would become warnings rather than targets. Olivia did not respond. She simply aimed and fired. The canyon fell silent again. 30 raiders had come to Meridian 7. 30 raiders had died here. The mission was complete. Almost. Olivia walked back toward the landing site. 3 ships remained functional, and they contained everything she needed. Evidence, data, coordinates to the raider base. The vengeance for Meridian 7 was not quite finished. The galaxy needed to know what happened here. The galaxy needed to know that humans, when pushed to the edge, became something far more dangerous than anyone expected. She reached the ships and began downloading their data. Behind her, the canyon held its dead. Ahead, the real work was about to begin. Getting this information to people who could use it. Making sure these raiders were the last to underestimate a human colony. making sure 47 deaths meant something. The three functional ships sat silent on the landing pad, their systems powered down but intact. Olivia spent 2 days learning to navigate their interfaces, using the manuals stored in their computer systems and the basic alien technology training Walsh had provided during their technical discussions. The ships were sophisticated but not incomprehensible. Most spacefaring species used similar fundamental designs for life support, navigation, and propulsion. The controls were labeled in the Raider language, but the symbols followed logical patterns she could decipher with Patience and Walsh's notes. She found the data logs first, detailed records of every raid the group had conducted over the past 2 years, coordinates, timelines, casualty counts, and profit calculations. 23 colonies hit, over 800 people killed. The raiders treated mass murder like a business spreadsheet, tracking efficiency and return on investment. Meridian 7 had been raid number 24. 3 more colonies were already marked on their schedule, isolated settlements with small populations and minimal defenses, easy targets for experienced killers. Except the experienced killers were all dead now, buried in canyons and caves across the planet they had underestimated. Olivia copied everything to secure storage drives. The evidence would prove what happened here and provide intelligence about the Raider organization structure. The logs contained communication records with a home base, including coordinates and recognition codes. She spent another day preparing 2 ships for automated flight. The navigation computers could be programmed to reach specific destinations without active pilots. She set courses for the nearest human military outpost, a journey of approximately 6 weeks at standard cruising speed. Inside the ships, she loaded everything that mattered: the sensor data from the colony attack, the complete Raider logs, copies of Meridian 7's personnel records so the dead would be properly remembered, and a detailed account of everything that happened after the massacre. Before sealing the ships, Olivia recorded a message. She sat in the pilot's chair, activated the recording system, and spoke directly to whoever would eventually receive this information. Her voice was steady as she explained what the Raiders had done to Meridian 7, how they had killed 47 people for profit, how they were part of a larger organization that systematically targeted isolated human colonies. She provided the coordinates for the Raider home base. She explained their tactics, their technology, their vulnerabilities, and she made a specific recommendation. These raiders had operated for years because they assumed humans were soft targets, scattered and defenseless. They needed to learn the cost of that assumption. They needed to understand that attacking human colonies would bring consequences, not just profit. She suggested a military response: swift, decisive, and thorough. Shut down the Raider organization completely. Make an example that would echo through the criminal networks of multiple species. The recording finished. Olivia sealed both ships and initiated their automated launch sequences. She watched from a safe distance as the vessels lifted off, accelerating toward the upper atmosphere and eventually into the darkness of space. 2 ships carrying evidence and a call for justice. 1 ship remaining, grounded but functional. Olivia kept the 3rd ship operational but disabled its long-range communications. She was not ready to be rescued yet. The work on Meridian 7 was not finished. She returned to the colony ruins and continued the task she had started: burying the dead, properly, with care and respect. The raiders had left the bodies where they fell, treating human lives as obstacles to be cleared. Olivia would not allow that disrespect to stand. It took weeks, digging in the rocky soil, moving bodies with gentle hands despite the decomposition, marking each grave with stones and personal effects when she could identify the remains. She buried the children last. That was the hardest, but she did it because they deserved to rest somewhere better than a destroyed schoolhouse. When the graves were finished, Olivia built a memorial, a simple structure using stone from the canyons and metal from the ruined colony. She engraved names when she knew them, and for those she could not identify, she marked their graves with the colony seal. 47 people who had come to Meridian 7 seeking purpose and community. 47 lives ended by greed and violence. 47 reasons why the galaxy needed to understand that human colonies were not easy targets. 3 months after the massacre, exactly on schedule, the supply ship arrived. The crew was expecting routine resupply operations and cheerful colonists eager for news from the wider universe. Instead, they found ruins and graves, and a single survivor who greeted them with calm efficiency. The captain, a veteran named Rodriguez, understood what he was seeing within minutes. He ordered his crew to document everything while he spoke with Olivia privately. She told him to check his message queue. By now, the automated ships should have reached the military outpost. By now, humanity should know about the raider threat. Rodriguez confirmed it. The ships had arrived. The evidence had been reviewed. A military task force was already mobilizing. The coordinates Olivia provided had been verified through intelligence channels. The raider home base would be hit within the month. Olivia nodded. Good. That was what she needed to hear. The deaths on Meridian 7 would mean something. The raiders who thought humans were soft targets would learn the cost of that mistake. Rodriguez offered her immediate evacuation, medical care, counseling, safety, everything the company could provide for someone who had survived such trauma. Olivia accepted the medical care but refused the counseling. She was not traumatized. She was changed but not broken. There was a difference. 6 months later, a human military task force located the raider base using Olivia's coordinates. The assault was brief and absolute. The raider organization was dismantled, its leadership captured or eliminated, and its operations across the sector permanently shut down. During interrogations, captured raiders spoke about Meridian 7 in hushed, frightened voices. They talked about the colony that fought back, about a single human who hunted 30 armed professionals through stone and shadow, about learning too late that human isolation did not mean human weakness. The story spread through criminal networks and frontier colonies alike. Meridian 7 became a legend, a warning, a promise that humanity would not accept victimization quietly. Olivia Grant returned to Earth for mandatory debriefing. Military intelligence wanted to understand her tactics. Psychological evaluators wanted to understand her mental state. Corporate representatives wanted to understand how to prevent future massacres. She answered their questions patiently. Yes, she used geological knowledge as a weapon. Yes, she planned each engagement carefully. Yes, she would do it again if necessary. The military offered her a position training special forces in survival tactics and guerrilla warfare. She declined. The academic community offered research positions studying her psychological resilience. She declined those too. Instead, Olivia volunteered for a new program, training colonial security forces, teaching settlers how to defend themselves, sharing the lessons written in blood and stone on Meridian 7. Because the galaxy had learned something important from an isolated colony and a geologist with a rifle. It had learned that humans, when pushed to the edge, did not break. They adapted, they fought, they won. And they made sure everyone remembered what happened when someone made the mistake of underestimating them. Olivia stood on a transport platform, preparing to ship out to her first training assignment. Another frontier colony, another group of civilians who needed to know how to survive. She carried Walsh's rifle, properly maintained, Dr. Patel's medical kit, restocked and updated, a small stone from Director Hayes's grave. Reminders of what had been lost, reminders of what had been avenged, reminders of why the work mattered. The transport engaged its engines. Olivia looked back at Earth one final time, then turned toward the stars, toward the frontier, toward places where humans built communities in isolation and hoped for peace. She would make sure they were prepared if peace failed. She would make sure Meridian 7 was the last colony to die helpless. The isolated colony had fallen, but its vengeance had echoed across the galaxy, and that echo would protect countless others who might have become victims. One geologist with nothing left to lose had changed everything. The raiders would never forget, and humanity would never be an easy target again.